those days I was temping to make my paycheck, pay my rent in New York City. And those were interesting times in offices because like it paid really well to temp. And oftentimes they just wanted somebody to fill a seat. And if the phone rang, you answered the phone and maybe took a message. A lot of those jobs at that time were just sitting and sitting and sitting. And so I was like, what am I going to do with myself here? And I started writing. So that's where it started for me, temping in New York City and being bored. Yeah, and then I took a class at School of Visual Arts. Brian Floca was my teacher, Caldecott winning children's book artist. This was way before that happened, and the class was called Children's Books from the Edge, and I still remember wanting to sign up for this class, and it was a lot of fun. It was like oh, like bridging my old love for like children's literature and children's illustration to something new and tangible for me. And I was like, I bought all these art supplies and I was really doing it. And like I'd come up with a manuscript and a dummy, book dummy, and what ended up happening was Brian had an editor friend near the end of the class come in to talk to us about how publishing worked. And the editor friend was named David Levithan. And he is, at the time, he had just started an imprint at Scholastic called Push. He was kind and generous enough to talk to us about picture books, even though that wasn't really his interest. One class I was heading home, I was living in Williamsburg, and walking home, I ran into Brian Floca and David Levithan, and they had, like, this was just after class, and they were heading to some bluegrass concert at a local bar, and they were like, come and join us. And through that, I sparked friendships with both of them, and that was what changed my life. I mean, I learned that, not only was picture book illustration something that existed, but it was like this very early burgeoning of the YA resurgence. And I sort of paid very close attention to what I learned when I was around these people, and temping in the offices that I was working at. I realized I was like, well, maybe I could try some of this YA stuff. And that was really my first attempt at becoming, I wouldn't say serious. I just was just like playing around and seeing like, what if I try and write a novel instead of these little short stories that I've been playing around with while sitting for 8 hours a day in a very quiet office and nobody looking at me. But that's kind of how everything sort of fell apart and then reassembled. I still look back at that one moment, making that choice to sign up for that continuing education class, and that changed my life. I mean, it's really weird to be able to look back at that one thing that if you hadn't done that, like, you wouldn't be sitting where you are right now. Do you have any moments like that? You ever have any moments like that?
I think everybody's got a few pivotal moments, and there's also a few moments where I recognize in retrospect, oh, I blew that. I could have done better at that moment. That probably would have been a crucial moment if I had been in my right mind, or not in my mind, if I had been prepared. Because sometimes those moments come along if you're not friendly, if you're not open to it, if you're not in a good place, you can blow right past it and miss it. And so I've got some where, oh my God, that worked out incredibly well. I would have never guessed. Thank God I was on it that day. And then some others like, you know what? I bet if I had been a little bit more on it that day, that seems like it was a good opportunity that I missed. Oh, well. I'd
You can
also love
only,
the idea that you're looking at the world of children's book illustrators and like, oh, you could get rejected. That's very uncertain. I better stick with acting. Better fall back on reliable theater to make my living.
the funny thing about that is that I knew that there was like anytime you're going to put yourself into an art or a creative field, there's going to be rejection, and there's going to be a lot of rejection. For me at that time, I mean, I had been getting lots of rejection as an actor, but what sort of was difficult and more painful about that was like what you said earlier, like you walk into a room and you don't look like how they anticipated, so they blow you off, and it starts to get into your head, like questioning, like, do I need to be skinnier? Do I need to have bigger muscles? Should I change my voice? Maybe my face isn't right. Like, like all of these questions sort of like dig deep inside of your psyche and like are very, very harmful, at least for certain people. And I'm one of those people. Getting rejected where I'm not standing in the room with the person rejecting me, I feel it's much easier. Like a rejection from an agent over email, or over mail back in the day when we were sending actual letters to people, sending hard copies of manuscripts to people, having come back and be like, no thanks, and either getting a reason why it was a no thanks or not. Like, great, I don't have to stand in the room with you while you say that to me and then like slink down a hallway and take a subway home. Like, I'm just like, all right, I can turn on TV now or open a book and like move on. So I'm not saying that it's any easier necessarily to be rejected by by anybody who's gatekeeping or producing or directing or casting anything. Just for me personally, I think it was just like I need to remove myself from a situation where all of this self-doubt is creating real problems. And thankfully, I'm not in that kind of space anymore. And I think it's hard. I think I really, like, that's why I say I have so much respect for the people who've stuck with it. And I have friends from college who have stuck with it. And maybe it took them 20 years. It's been more than 20 years. I guess about 20 years since I've left college. And they're just now like starting to find their groove in terms of like Hollywood or theater or something. Like I was like 20 years. I couldn't even imagine sticking through 20 years of auditioning and doing all the stuff that you have to do in order to have people remember your name and your face and be like, oh yeah, this person, they have a great reputation. Should we consider them for this job finally? Yeah, let's do it. I mean, I've friends, like I said, I have friends who are at that point now, and I'm so proud of them. I'm like, it's unbelievable. I'm not that kind of person.
I find it, I don't know if interesting is the right word, but it's amusing to me because I would think that being rejected as an actor would be easier. Oh, you were looking for a redhead, I'm not, then that's fine. I'm sorry you wasted my 8 hours, but that's okay. I brought a project or something. I made the most use of my time. Whereas, or if you say, oh, he's too handsome for the role, his muscles are too large.
Oh, yeah. Right.
Whereas if you're looking at my manuscript, I'm not there. You're not rejecting me. It's my art. Everything I had, I put into that, and it still wasn't good enough. Versus if I just walked into the room and you don't like my face, but you didn't even see my art.
Yeah.
That would have struck me as easier, but that sounds like that's not the case. It was so much easier just to have the
I
cold
think
rejection of the work.
I think it depends on the kind of person you are. Like, and at that time in my life, it was much harder to face people, you know, to face people and see that kind of reaction, rather than like sending multiple letters to multiple people, manuscripts or whatever was trying to do. And like all of that, those decisions happening in some other room far away, like it was like a very psychological sort of thing. But yeah, I can see
the
the case.
rejections that came were just such a nice relief and a break in the pace. Like, oh, that's fine. It's just a piece of paper. I don't have to look at you while you do it. Great, put it over there.
Yeah. And like I said, like I think there's a huge aspect of like not having to get on the train and like ride somewhere and like then be rejected. I was like, if you're gonna reject me, just like I want to stay home for it.